Hello and welcome to the Jigme Keltsing podcast show. My name is Jigme Keltsing. Each week you'll hear fascinating conversations as well as stories from many professionals from a broad range of fields and experiences they've had. On today's episode, I have the great pleasure to chat with Francois Klark. Francois is South African-born Canadian singer-songwriter, producer, and who's released a brand new album called Adventure Book. He joins me tonight to talk more about it. Welcome, Francois.
Jigme, thank you so much for having me again. It's always lovely to see you.
It's great to see you and connect with fellow Humber alumni.
There you go. Yeah.
And also me being a Humber alumni because I graduated recently, which is
Congrats.
yeah, graduated from broadcasting radio. I know that you've had a ton of experience at Humber. Talk to me more about it.
Yeah, I was there for the 4-year Bachelor's of Music at Humber at the Lakeshore campus and loved every minute of it. First year was absolutely stressful and fourth year was absolutely stressful. but just high pressure. But honestly, one of the best experiences, and it happened at a time in my life that, it was the perfect timing and one of the best decisions that I've ever made that just kind of really set the course of my career and my life, and just also some of the social relationships that I have that I met at Humber. So yeah, definitely one of the best decisions that I made.
Sure. And before we talk about your career, I want to talk about Namibia. I know we talked about it in the interview I did with you prior.
Yeah.
But I want my podcast listeners to hear the story because I find it really interesting. Because there isn't very much people who have sort of your experience. It's very unique, I find. Someone that comes from South Africa, and then just writes songs that are sort of the journey to how you got to Canada and sort of how you've been raised in music and the inspirations behind you, musical artists that you look up to. Talk to me more about like your background and sort of how you grew up in Namibia.
So I was born in Namibia on the furthest north part in the Caprivi Strip. My dad was stationed there during some conflicts between Angola and South Africa. It was, I'm not too familiar with all the details of what was happening, but so my dad was stationed up there, and I was born during that time. And my family was originally from South Africa, but they, obviously just moved to Namibia because of my dad's work. And then, so I spent the first couple of years of my life in Namibia, which, a lot of the memories that I have of Namibia is a lot of the stories that my mom had told me because I was so little. But then, like some of my earliest memories were also there. I think it's just being raised in Namibia and also in South Africa, being exposed to so many different cultures, because within such a, those two countries, there are so many different tribes and cultures and combination of people coming together. And much like Canada, maybe not as much of a melting pot as Canada, but definitely so diverse. And musically, just being able to be exposed to so many different cultures. Like, so I immediately, once my family moved back to South Africa, I love being in choir. There's a really, really strong choir culture in South Africa. So every town has a choir, every school has a choir, the province has a choir, everybody just has a choir. And that really gave me the opportunity to kind of explore my own country, travel with the choir. And then through that, had the opportunity to be exposed to different choir directors from different cultures and different tribes within our own country. And I think right there is kind of where my love for world music kind of started. And by the time I came to Humber, being exposed to Latin music and the samba ensemble, and just really falling in love with Spanish music. But yeah, I think definitely growing up in South Africa and the music cultures back home laid the groundwork for that love of world music, which to this day just really inspires my music. And I love like a lot, like most people, like listening to music, but then music really directly inspires my music. And then just drawing a little bit of that world music cultures into my music, which is something I did with the first record. I had some of my friends from back home collaborate with me on a track called For You, which was probably the track with the most, South African influenced track that I've ever done. And then with this current record, just judging by some of the titles of the tune, there's a lot of Spanish influence and Latin American influence and Central American influence. So yeah, like that definite cultures and music and places have always been such a big influence on my music and a muse to my music. And with this new record, very much so inspired by going to different places, traveling, meeting people, the music that's from there. That is a really, really long answer to a very short question.
I mean, absolutely. And speaking of music, talk to me sort of how you first began your career as an artist. I know we talked about Humber at the beginning of it, but can you talk more a little bit about how sort of Humber gave you that kickstart to your career, and now how it's evolved?
Right. Obviously on the music side of things, just laying the groundwork and the foundation for the knowledge, like the musical knowledge, knowing the theory, being able to play instruments, being able to kind of hone your craft. As for me, I did my major in voice, so just learning all those techniques things. So just really laying the foundation for the longevity of a career in music. On the other hand, learning stuff like putting a record together, or putting a concert together, or a show together, or a gig together, and planning what that looks like, or what to do during the production of a record. And like they touched during my time, we didn't really have I think the music business program kind of came closer towards the end of my year, so I never did the music business course, and I wish I did. There's so many good things about it. But in some of the courses that we had, they kind of hinted at some of the business side of things, and just kind of orienting you towards what to do outside of music, but once you're in the real world. So Humber was 100% kind of the jump start for my career. And then after Humber is when I think that it was like the very year after Humber, there's a technician at Humber, Andy Pride, phenomenal human being that was just so incredibly supportive. He's always at the Humber Lakeshore Auditorium. He's the guy that runs the sound, runs the studio, the first studio that they had there. I think he's now also involved in the new big studio that they have. But he just was so supportive in encouraging artists to kind of make music, and he kind of helped me with the very first record that I did. It was an acoustic record, no electronic production, no programming. Everything was very, very raw and acoustic, and just really helped me kind of get that idea of what it actually means to put a record together. And then from that point on, just using but the context that you made going to school with all these people at Humber College really set kind of just paved the road for future gigs, and kind of getting me started. And from that point on, I've always loved writing, but at that point, just graduating from Humber, having the tools to be able to take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And you're just touching on how Humber sort of paved the way for you, and really ignite the passion within you. Can you talk about what you kind of learned and took away from that journey, and sort of how it's really shaped you as an artist?
I think one of the most important things that I kind of took away from Humber, in kind of just the way that the Humber music program had structured the program, we always had these performances and juries and little shows that we had to put on, and you were so dependent on your co-students and your co-musicians to be able to put these things together. So I think one of the greatest things that I learned there was like cherishing those relationships with your fellow musicians and your peers, and putting that relationship first, and then just good music coming for, or like any working relationship just kind of flows directly out of a really good relationship. So having real relationships with people, putting that first, and then music second, or work second, and then that just naturally is it just naturally happens to be a really good thing, because the relationship is a healthy relationship. So I think that's one of the most important things that I learned at Humber, just because of the way that the program was structured. And then obviously a lot of the things that we talked about during your previous question.
Mm-hmm. And so I know that we're talking about the positives, but explain more about the challenges of being at Humber, and specifically the program that you were in?
Some of the personal challenges that I had, uh, like I said, my first year was kind of tough, just because I came from a classical choir background where, I was able to sight read, but I didn't. I took piano when I was a little kid, but I didn't have piano and I didn't have theory. So, kind of getting into the program, and I kind of got into the program by the skin of my teeth, uh, just based on the fact that I could sing, and but I didn't have any theory and I didn't have any piano. And um, Humber was great. They put me in, instead of putting me in first year theory and some first year classes, I was in a prep year. It was like a year leading up to what would actually be your first year. So I kind of did that simultaneously. So first year was kind of tough just because I felt like I didn't speak the language. Oh, and that was another thing. Like I actually didn't speak English that well in my first year because I speak Afrikaans coming from South Africa. I never had school in English. My hometown is predominantly Afrikaans. So that was a challenge as well. Just being in an environment where you're learning in a different language, you have to respond in a different language, you have to be creative in a different language. That was a challenge. The program itself was a challenge for me just because I didn't have that theoretical or an instrument to kind of just continue my knowledge. So it was kind of starting from scratch. Um, the program itself was challenging just because it's such a high standard. Academically, your professors are expecting a lot from you at a high standard, and they weren't just handing out grades. You really had to work for it. So that was a challenge. There was a couple times where you slept in the student lounge just to make sure that you've crammed all the information that you need to or prepared for a gig and rehearsing till what time in the morning. And then fourth year again was kind of challenging just because that's in your fourth year you have a really big performance that you put on. It's like an hour to an hour and a half show that you have to put on. You have to organize the whole thing, rehearse the music, write the music, arrange the music, do the sheets, rehearse the band. So that year leading up to that concert was kind of challenging as well, but I would not trade it for anything in the world. It was kind of like a real world experience moment. And so aside from all the challenges, I think the program wouldn't have been as amazing as it was if it hadn't been for all those challenges that the program presented.
Right. And obviously, clearly, since that experience, your life has changed and you found yourself working with so many respected artists, winning a Universal Music Award, and also got to open for big time names like Grammy winner John Bellion and countless others. In addition to that, believe it or not, Francois Klark has also featured a song on a Netflix film called Feel the Beat, which if you haven't watched, you should watch it. It's really strong. It's a song called Always, then was re recorded and covered by the star herself, Sophia Carson. Now, when you hear these accomplishments you've made and people tell you this stuff on interviews and stuff, just what goes through your mind?
I think you and I touched on this a little bit during the last time that we talked, but um, the first thing is just I it doesn't feel like that wasn't me. It feels like you're talking about somebody else, but at the same time, also just so incredibly thankful. And then most of all these things that have happened in my life are connected to relationships that I have with people. So being able to think about that each one of these things that I've achieved is a direct result of a relationship that I have with somebody else. And I feel like nothing that you do in this life is something that you do because of just yourself. Obviously, you put in the work, but there's a bunch of people that come across your path that make it possible for these things to happen.
Absolutely. And I think the song Always strikes a chord with so many people because it speaks to who we are as human beings. It speaks about kindness. It talks about just being more courteous about others, um, and really helping pave the way for those around you as well. Because at the end of the day, you can think about what you've done, but it's really down to how you can really treat other people, and really help them get their start in something that they want to do, whether it's music, whether it's another job, whether it's somewhere that they want to go to. right? I think that song was so reminiscent. Can you talk to me more about the writing concept behind that song?
Yeah, I can. It's very interesting, with, and I think we all do this. We all listen to a song by a writer that we really love, and the human thing to do is to kind of just take that story and place it into our lives, because we obviously have the context of our own lives, and not whoever else is like either written the song or. So that's kind of the first thing that happens. You take a song and you kind of put it onto your own life. So it's really interesting to kind of to get some feedback from people on the internet or social media, and kind of hear what the song means to them. And it's, in a lot of cases, it's quite different. Like a lot of people had kind of mentioned that the song um, kind of brings them peace because they have lost a loved one, and then that's what the song means to them. And other people would say, it's a love song for them, where it makes them think of this person that's always there for them and that they love, and so on. Personally, for me, it had two layers to it. So uh, it when I wrote the song, I wrote it with the intention of writing it in a way so that it could be very much a love song that you would be singing to somebody else, but kind of like with a layer underneath it that was a little bit more personal to me, where I was going through some stuff in my own life where I felt like I was maybe not being accepting or kind to myself as a person. So almost singing the song to the real me, who I am, and kind of just kind of saying, you the real Francois has always been there for me, and I need to be kind to this person who I am, and accept the person who I am. And because I was kind of going through a time where I felt like in society we so often feel like you have to change things about yourself in order to be accepted, or you're so afraid that you're not going to be accepted for who you really are. And but then you kind of lose yourself. You lose touch with who you are as a person, and all of a sudden you become what other people around you want, or what you think other people want you to be. And so this song was a turning point for me to accept and give myself the space to be who I'm supposed to be and who I really am, and not change for the people around me and who I think they want me to be. And that's something that I really struggled with. And I think I struggle with it a little bit still in the music industry, because the music industry has a way of telling you you have to be this way in order to be you have to be like A, B, or C in order to be a current, in order to make it. And it's so easy to then go, okay, I'm going to do everything that I can to to make it, to become that person, and then again to get to a point where all of a sudden one day you look back and you realize, well, I don't even know who this person is at this moment, whether it's uh, a person or an artist, like this image that you've created. So maybe that's like, I the idea behind the song was definitely to write it as a love song. It means something to myself, and that's where I found the strength and the honesty to be able to write the song. But the intention was also there for me to make sure that I write it in a way so that people can relate it to their own lives, and either make it a love song about somebody else or somebody that they have lost. Or so yeah, that's like again, the longest, deepest explanation.
No, it's okay because like I think that like a lot of people cut off a lot of people when they talk about deep things, but I think it's important that we can all find a way to really explain um, in the longest or shortest manner of what we feel is important to say
Yeah.
on something. And something that really stuck out about what you just said was battling insecurities of is am I doing enough to please me, or am I doing enough to please the audience?
Or am I doing
and
something for somebody else?
and
Yeah.
I also deal with that too. Like for instance, this podcast is like I always want to bring on guests that I am interested in, but then there's that insecurity where I'm battling that is coming in my mind, that I say, but am I doing it for me, or am I doing it for the audience? And do I want to bring on guests that the audience wants to hear and see from, or do I bring on people that I love and people that I sort of correlate more towards. And
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's so reminiscent of what you were just talking about. Um, and so speaking of sort of the songwriting aspect, um, let's jump into talking about your new record, Adventure Book,
Mhm.
because it's that journey. It's that journey that we were talking about. The world received it not too long ago. If there's anything you want people to know about this album, what would it be?
uh, I just want people to enjoy it. Like to when they listen to it, have a good time. Like my intention going into this record was, I want to make something that is lighter and fun to listen to. So that would be a takeaway for me. So, I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted people to experience beauty and joy. And so that's the spirit behind the album and what I want people to take away from it.
Hmm. Interesting you say that because there are two songs on the album that are my favorites. But I'm curious to hear before I say mine. In your opinion, as the songwriter and the creator of this album, what songs on the album do you feel are your favorites to listen to?
Uh, I to listen to. I really like Fuego, the second track on the record. It's super up tempo. It's just fun to turn on while you're driving. So to listen to, that would be the one for me. That's just like this is fun. I like listening to it. The song on the record that probably means like has a really special place to me is a song called "Beautiful Universe." Um, it was a song that I wrote about uh, a moment. I was in traveling in Guatemala, and I was taking a bus, like a tiny little mini bus, from a town called Rio Dulce to Tikal, which is in the north of Guatemala. And it was a moment where I still don't speak much Spanish at all. I suck at it. But that was like even a couple years back when I didn't know anything, and I had memorized just how to say, which bus do I take to get to Rio Dulce, or and so I got on this bus with a bunch of people, and nobody on this little mini bus looked anything like me, and I didn't speak the language and they didn't speak mine, and so there was no way for us to communicate. But the thing that struck me in that moment was, as I was kind of looking at some of the young families with two kids, or a grandma, or somebody that just came back from work, wherever it is that they were working. Like, we got all these people, all the different facets of life, and in that moment, as I was looking at all these people, they would remind me of people in my life. Like, there was somebody there that would remind me of my grandma. And so in that moment, the the human element of us kind of became so apparent to me, that we're all so the same, even though we speak completely different languages, even though we look completely different. And the thing that was really striking to me was that this foreigner in this little minibus that's clearly out of place, people were so incredibly kind towards me. And so that first initial human reaction from them was, oh, we need to help this person who clearly is very like looking lost, or they were so kind and wanted to share the food and the snacks that they had. And so Beautiful Universe is as a snapshot of that moment in that minibus on the way to Tikal, where I just experienced this beautiful moment where I felt like we are the same, and these people who I do not know, that do not look like me, remind me of family members in my own life. And in that moment, I felt like I was amongst family.
Hmm. And that's so interesting because Fuego and Beautiful Universe were actually two of my favorites that I was
Were
just
those
about
the
to
two that you
say.
were going to say?
Yes, yeah. I actually had it listed in the actual question that I was going to ask,
Yeah.
because I really wanted to know what the writing concept behind Fuego and Beautiful Universe was, and you just touched on it, which was um, really fascinating. And it's true. I mean, a lot of the songs on the album are love songs, but then there are songs on the album that are upbeat, and you just want to dance around to and have a good time, right?
Mhm.
That's sort of, and you touched on it before, that you wanted people just to enjoy it, and feel more of the embraceful energy from it. Um, and so, talk to me more about this news collection, because I feel that there are positive moments of creating these things and creating records, and but
Mhm.
then there are challenging aspects of, you know, does this sound good? Does this sound bad? Which one goes together well? What's the melody going to sound like? Talk to me more about the process behind how you go through your music and what you want it to sound like.
For this specific record, the writing process was easier than it's ever been because it started during the very beginning of our first global lockdown in 2020. So, there was no other things fighting for your attention. We didn't know what was happening. We couldn't go to work. We None of us knew what was happening. So it was such a freeing moment to be uh, in my place and just sit behind the piano. So the writing happened actually quite fast. And as I was writing it, I started realizing, as I'm writing this, what I'm kind of doing is I'm reminiscing about uh, traveling and places that I've been and the stories that came from all these places that I've been and the people that I met. And then as I write, normally the way that I write is I write, I'm sitting in front behind the piano, and the chords and the melody and the lyrics all kind of happen at the same time for me. They're very connected because the chords dictate where the melody is going to go. The phrasing of the lyrics dictate how the melody is going to go, and the melody is dictated by the phrasing, so everything is very interconnected with me. So I write all that stuff at the same time. And as I'm writing, I also take little notes on the side of my notepad. Um, and just make notes about uh, what instrumentation I would like, or what the vibe of this is. The challenging thing for this record maybe was that it had to be produced during 2 years of lockdowns and COVIDs and studios not being open, and so that meant a lot of emails, and so that was one thing that was a little bit challenging about this record.
Mhm. And what would you say are the most enjoyable aspects of working on this new album?
Doing some of the things that I have been kind of dreaming about, like the production, what the production sounded like. And one of the biggest things for me was being able to lean in a little bit deeper into um, cinematic music. So I really love orchestral and cinematic stuff, electronic music, world music, as we've already talked about, and pop music. And for this record, just having had the opportunity to work with some composers that I really like, Christian Berge, James Irvin, two Humber grads that are kind of in the film and TV industry. So I would just compose little themes, and the two of them would arrange orchestral compositions for it. That was such an exciting and fun element. And some of my favorite things on the album, or favorite moments on the album, were um, the outro of the album. That's just a big instrumental piece that James Irvin had made, or the orchestral arrangement that Christian had done for the tune Sailing. Those are like little self-indulgent moments in the record that I am super proud of and really, really love.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to wrap up, is there anything you can tell us in regards to what we can expect in the near future?
As far as new music's concerned, that's something that I haven't even thought of, because we just finished this record. So I haven't, the bug is there that I already want to start writing again. In the near future, right now, I'm just pushing this record to radio. So if whoever is listening, if you want to call into your local radio station and ask them for any of the tunes on the record, you can do that. Ask them to play it. Also appreciate that so much. And then in the new year, gonna do a little bit of a radio tour, or in the fall and in the winter, a little tour across Canada and a little bit in the States, like a little radio tour. And then the new year, hoping to visit Germany and the UK, just since I have like a small group of people that's been listening to the music there, and I would love to, just go visit and say hi and play a couple of gigs there.
Right, right. And it's so interesting that you actually say that like, you're saying that you've already have that writing bug that you want to already get going on writing more stuff. And there was an interview that Sean Mendes did on with Ryan Seacrest, and he talked about how he doesn't like to listen to his music often,
Yeah,
maybe once every 4 months. He said, and he said that because if he did that, if he listened to it over and over again, he'd already want to go back in the studio and say that I want to fix this, I want to fix that, and then I get new ideas to work on, and
yeah,
then
you kind of have to let it go.
I'm creating myself this busy feeling in my head, and I'm like, I have to create another album. But then you already have the album out, but you want to create another album back to back and not really get a rest in. And so interesting that you actually say that. Do you ever feel like you would want to create another album if you kept listening to your songs over and over again?
Once I'm done with the record, done writing it, I feel like once I've let go of it and released it into the world, I feel very much, done with it, happy with it, but ready to go for the next thing, ready to do the next thing. Obviously, after working so hard, I want to take some time off. And I think it's really important as a songwriter to experience life, to live life in order to have stories to write about. But yeah, no, I'm there's definitely already ideas for the next record, which won't be for a little bit. Like, I want this record to first live and enjoy its first year of being alive and being in the world and so on. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Francois, for taking your time out to talk with me today. I had a great time chatting with you. Congratulations again on your new album. This new collection is definitely going to be that huge breakthrough moment you've been waiting for. I truly feel that. To the listeners who have made it this far in the episode, thanks so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Canadian singer-songwriter and producer Francois Klark. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. For further information about him, you can visit francoisklark.com. If you'd like to help spread the word about my podcast, please do feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media. Any form of support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for listening. I've been your host, Jigme Kelsang. See you in the next episode.